This week, as most of the 2020 field is preparing for the first debates in Miami, one candidate is dealing with a crisis back home. South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg spent part of the weekend listening to his constituents after a white police officer shot and killed a local black man last week. CBS News Chief Congressional Correspondent Nancy Cordes has the story.
We have tried but not succeeded to increase diversity in the police department, and we need help.
At home in South Bend, Indiana, Buttigieg was confronted by accusations of bias in his city's police force.
Y'all got racism inside of y'all police department. How are we supposed to trust this?
I am raising a 7-year-old grandson that when he sees the police, he is afraid. That is not what's supposed to happen.
Racial tensions flared last week after a white South Bend police officer shot and killed a black man who was allegedly holding a knife. The officer was wearing a body camera, but it was not turned on.
If anyone who is on patrol is shown to be a racist or to do something racist in a way that is substantiated, that is their last day on the street.
Buttigieg dropped off the campaign trail after the shooting last week.
I just think it's my job. I don't know if it's smart or not. I don't know if it's strategic or not. But it's my city.
There's not a racist bone in my body.
Race has been a central issue on the trail, too. Democrats are still chewing over former Vice President Joe Biden's boast last week that he found ways in Congress to compromise with segregationist senators, even if he disagreed with them.
Praising and coddling individuals who made it their life works and built their reputation off of segregation of the races in the United States. That's a problem.
And Jack Turman joins me now from South Bend, Indiana. He is our CBS News 2020 campaign reporter. Here with me on set is CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns, and Democratic strategist Joel Payne joins us now from Washington. Thanks to all of you for being with us. Jack, let me start with you because you were there at the town hall where Pete Buttigieg was over the weekend. Tell us what you saw and what you heard.
Yeah, Elaine, it was a very testy and emotional town hall. A lot of residents came and they expressed their disappointment and kind of their frustration towards city administration officials for their lack of action, as they would say, in regards to improving the relationship between the community and law enforcement here. One resident said, get the racists off the streets towards Mayor Buttigieg. And, he kind of just sat there and was kind of taking it all in. And then afterwards, in a press gaggle, he was visibly emotional. And when he was asked, why is he doing this town hall, especially ahead of the Miami debates this week, he, kind of choked up a little bit and said, this is my job. I don't know if this is smart. I don't know if this is essentially the right move, but it's his. He argued that this is his city and he needs to be here to listen to community members in this time. Especially when there's this strained relationship between law enforcement and the community.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Jack, how did he sort of leave things? I mean, how long was this town hall? What did he say sort of towards the end about, moving forward at this point?
Yeah, near the end of the town hall, it was approximately a little bit over an hour, and he basically said, this is the beginning of the conversation and not the end. And that kind of wrapped out the town hall, and the moderator here, who's Reverend Michael Patton, basically ended it in prayer, and that was the end of the town hall, and that was the pathway forward. He acknowledged that he has failed in regards towards, improving minority recruitment of police officers here, but also in the implementation of body cameras. Reportedly, the police sergeant here who was involved in the shooting did not activate his body camera, so they're pondering ways to look into how to improve that policy moving forward.
All right, CBS News 2020 campaign reporter Jack Turman. Jack, I know you have to get going and do some additional reporting. Thank you so much, Jack, for being with us. Joel, let me turn to you. There is a clip, Joel, that I want to play from South Bend. This is when Mayor Buttigieg was speaking with protesters. This is ahead of that town hall, or I believe a day or two before the town hall itself. Let's listen to that.
You running for president and you want black people to vote for you? That's a downfall. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. You running for president and you want black people to support you and vote for you. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
I'm not asking for your vote.
You ain't gonna get it either. Do you believe that Black Lives Matter? Can you say to us today, in front of all these cameras, that Black Lives Matter?
Did you just ask me if Black Lives Matter?
Yes. We want to hear you say it.
Of course, Black Lives Matter.
You know, this is really a moment of testing for this young mayor who is faced with a crisis that we have heard a lot about, police shootings. And in this case, it was a white police officer and a black man who was killed. For a mayor who's 37 years old, what kind of test is this?
It just reminds me of the fact that these campaigns are so much about images. You know, I'm reminded by a saying by Maya Angelou, it's not about what you said, it's about how you make someone feel. And these images are so important to how voters are thinking about this campaign and they're thinking about these candidates. And those were tough images for the mayor. I will say it seems like that he performed a lot better at the town hall and that was a lot better received. And that he kind of ended the entire engagement with this city in a better place than where it started. But these are very, very fragile relationships that he's trying to manage at the local level. And I'll also say this, you know, this is a cycle where African Americans, I've said it numerous times, the heart of the Democratic primary is going to run right through Black America. An issue like this, which in the past would have been an annoyance, is now an existential crisis for a campaign. And Mayor Buttigieg and his team have to harness this and have to be able to spin it into how they are going to turn this into a net positive or at least mitigate the negatives surrounding this situation to be able to endure this part of the campaign.
Caitlin, let me first ask you, it's interesting to watch this unfold and to see what's taking place here and the raw emotions that Mayor Buttigieg is being confronted with, because he has used his biography as the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, very much in his presidential campaign. Tell us a little bit about that and how perhaps now it's obviously pointing to a moment of crisis for him.
Exactly. South Bend is a centerpiece of his campaign, and he has used it to push back against any criticism that he may be too young or too inexperienced for this position. He likes to say that he has more executive experience than the current occupant of the White House. Well, now that experience is really being put to the test. This is a mayor who has really enjoyed a fast rise in the Democratic Party, and throughout this primary process has done a lot of national media, has gotten a lot of attention for not only his handling of tough questions, but also has shown an ability to connect at least nationally. Now comes the real test for him, how he is being perceived back home. And Joel brings up a great point, which is that this is coming against the backdrop of the party discussing out in the open these issues. Just last week, there was a hearing on Capitol Hill on reparations. You and I were just in South Carolina, where, of course, 60% of the electorate there is African American. Pete Buttigieg was there on Saturday speaking to the convention. But how he handles this, I think, will be kind of make or break for his campaign. Having a day job presents benefits, but also liabilities, and he is now in the liability stage, perhaps.
And Joel, let me turn back to you. This notion of this history, right, that this is not just about sort of South Bend, Indiana, but this is a part of a larger narrative. This is the continuation of a story that we have seen play out all across this nation that now Mayor Pete Buttigieg is finding himself very much in the middle of. How critical is it for Mayor Pete Buttigieg, for other candidates, to show that they are comfortable and conversant on issues of race in 2019?
It is absolutely essential for these candidates, particularly Mayor Buttigieg and others who, frankly, are not ethnic minorities, who are male, these people who do not come from historically underrepresented minority groups, that they understand the language and they understand and they are conversant in how people feel about these issues. You could argue that Mayor Pete Buttigieg and that his staff reacted relatively well, you know, in terms of how you would react to this type of a crisis. crisis. But no matter how you react, the emotion, the raw emotion of that moment is really hard to contain. It's the pain of a mother, and it's a story, by the way, that's been told all over the country. We just saw it in Phoenix a week and a half ago with a young family that was accosted by a police officer there. We've seen it in South Carolina. It frankly was the reason why Hillary Clinton was able to turn the corner in 2016 in South Carolina, because she was able to harness a lot of the pain of young black mothers who lost their young sons to gun violence in the South. These are really, really compelling issues, and issues of great importance to the African American community, and we're seeing this really play out on the largest stage before, by the way, a really, really important debate where these issues are going to be teased out. It's a part of a larger race narrative that you talked about in your lead up.
Yeah, and let me ask you about that, Caitlin, because, you know, we were just in South Carolina, and in the lead up to Representative Clyburn's fish fry, there was a lot of back and forth between former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Cory Booker about some comments that some saw as insensitive. And so, you know, how do you think that those kinds of issues, that a particular situation involving the former Vice President and Cory Booker, and this most recent sort of situation now where Mayor Buttigieg is facing some really difficult questions about race, how do you think that's going to manifest itself on stage?
I think what we've been finding in our reporting on the ground in South Carolina and some of these other states is that this primary electorate is pretty forgiving of personal stumbles, or they don't really want to see much inter-party division, but what they aren't forgiving of is someone who cannot connect with them personally and cannot prove to them that they have what it takes to win, even as they're still sorting out exactly what that means. This kind of idea of connecting with people is something that a lot of these candidates have to show. And if you take the strategy that the mayor has employed so far, has really been a national strategy, doing lots of media. He has been campaigning, but people mostly know him through interviews that they've watched of him. And voters that I talked to haven't penalized him for that. They still are very interested in and drawn to him. But this is a moment that will show, because of the attention that it's getting, whether he has the management skills and whether he has that emotional capacity to really connect with folks. And that remains to be seen, really, how he handles this. And also, you know, does this prohibit him from the debate later on this week if it escalates, or will he get criticism back home for leaving and participating in the debate? Again, shows the challenges of maintaining this kind of a job where you're so connected to the community, also balancing a run for president.
Just before we let you go, Joel, let me ask you, how much is at stake, particularly for Mayor Buttigieg, with these Democratic debates coming up?
It's absolutely critical. I'd say this, Mayor Pete has been, he and maybe Senator Warren have been the two candidates that have actually seen positive momentum throughout this entire primary process. So what's at stake for him is a place at the head table as one of the leading front runners. He's worked very hard to dig out that type of a place in the field, and you know, obviously the events of this week and what's going to happen at the debates coming up are going to play a significant role in whether or not he's able to maintain that positioning. I will say his greatest skill set has been his gift of charisma and his gift of moving crowds and moving people. That is going to be on test this week, and it certainly plays into his strength as being someone who can move large groups of people and really create hope through some of his message.
All right, we're certainly going to be watching very closely. Caitlin Huey-Burns and Joel Payne, thank you both.